Hello. Welcome to this week. Hello. Welcome to This Week in Politics. Well, today's program is going to be a program that I haven't really seen anybody do anything on. And it's also going to be a program where after you listen to it and you think about it, I'm sure people can build on this to where the picture that I'm about to start to paint, you or somebody else might be able to completely fill the picture up. Well, let me tell you about how I got here. When the Vegas shooting happened, I was one of those that was very interested in that. I watched all the videos, I watched all the research, everything. And after a couple of weeks, I got so discouraged and so upset with our government because it was as obvious as the nose on my face that the FBI was covering up what had happened. And I have some theories on why, but the fact of the matter is, I didn't know why. And I'm still not positive that I know why, but I know that it happened. Um, and I had a whole list of, I did a lot of programs on Vegas. And one of them, one of the first ones I did was I went through and I asked a series of, I don't know how many questions that should have been easy peasy questions right out of the chute, you know? One that has never been addressed as an example would be the video inside the hotel. Why was none of that ever released? Ever? Why was it never made public that the owner of that hotel was Muslim? That was never made public as far as I know, at least not by the mainstream media. But it goes on and on and on and on, and I just got so disgusted. I threw it away, and I decided, if the government's going to cover up, nobody's ever going to find out the answers. Just like the JFK. That was the main reason I got involved in Vegas, is because it all stunk to high heaven, just like the JFK thing did. And I believe that whoever was in charge of covering up Vegas also was in charge of covering up JFK. Similarities to that one was unbelievable. And I think I even did a program on that, actually. So anyway, so over the last couple of weeks since the shooting in Parkland, I was just disgusted and had determined I am not going to add to all of the chatter going on over this shooting. I'm just not going to give it any time. And when I do that, I have no problem at all absolutely forgetting whatever I want to forget. But for some reason, this just kept nagging at me. And then I realized that feeling that I had was exactly the same feeling I had over Vegas. So I thought, well, why? And then it hit me. There was some similarities. And I thought, well, I never thought of that. And then another one hit me. I thought, you know what? I think I'm going to jot these down. And I started writing and I couldn't put my pen down. And I haven't counted them, but there's a list of them. And the similarities between the two was like, holy cow. Whoever's in charge of this is the same person that was in charge of Vegas, who was the same person that was in charge of JFK, and probably countless others along the way that I hadn't paid attention to. And then it hit me. That is why these things are designed to be spaced out or jammed up together so that people the American people either don't have the time to connect the dots, or so much time passes in between that the details escape our memory. And I thought, wow, okay. So I did a program, like I said, a long time ago about the similarities between JFK and Vegas. So now I'm going to do this program, different format. The, the format I used before was the Right Wing Reverend, a series of 30-minute programs. This one I'm going to do one program. I'm going to take my time. I'm going to look at it, unless other material comes up. So that over time, we will have in my opinion anyway, a definite bunch of dots to connect from JFK to probably to Twin Towers, probably to Sandy Hook, probably to a lot of the other shootings, and then to Vegas, and now to Parkland. But the three specifically that I looked at was JFK, Vegas, and now Parkland. So, without further ado, let's take a look at some of the similarities between the Vegas shooting and the Parkland shooting. Now, just, and this is not on my list, but just off of the top, both were done by lone wolf individuals. Both were done by quirky personality types. Both were done by males on their own. And both were done by males, as were most of them. And both of them were done in public arenas. I mean, the hotel is a public place. The concert grounds where he shot the people at was a public ground. The school in Parkland is public property. I mean, it's not like they were on their own home turf. It's not like they were at home and they killed 27 people in their home. Okay. They were on public property. Now, why is that important? Well, just off the top of my head, if you wanted to control something, where would you want to control it? Where you can control it. And if you're the federal government, you want to control it in a public place where the authorities have control. I mean, let's say that if they did a mass shooting in somebody's house, they eventually will have control over that house. Now, the authorities might have temporary control, but they can't control that forever. A coroner's office, on the other hand, is a public building. They can control that indefinitely. You see what I mean? Okay. So the shooter in Vegas and the kid at Parkland, the shooter, they were both on antidepressant drugs and psychological drugs. We don't know that they were the same types of drugs, but we know that they were both on psychological drugs and they had both seen psychiatrists. We know this to be true. And here's an interesting fact that I don't think anybody else has picked up on, but the sheriff in Vegas and the sheriff in Parkland, they both worked for the FBI in their earlier careers. Isn't that interesting? I wonder what percentage of sheriffs nationwide have worked for the FBI. It's extremely, extremely coincidental, and it appears people have gone out of their way not to make that connection. But both sheriffs have worked for the FBI. for sure. Uh, Now the FBI, the connection to the shooter in Vegas is he was rumored to have worked for the FBI, and he worked for a company and had a security clearance that did work for the FBI, and we know that to be a fact. So the FBI continues to show up in both of these shootings. When you consider that both of these shooters, as I said, were in a public place. One was in a hotel. There are more cameras per square inch in Vegas than anywhere else on the planet. In every hotel, you could not walk out of your door and go anywhere without being on camera. And yet, here we are, 5 or 6 months after the Vegas shooting, and not one piece of audio or one piece of video has been released. We know they have it. The sheriff told us they had it. And at one point, about 3 months ago, he said, we are 95% through all of the audio and video. And at that, when we are done with it, we will release it. Well, nothing's been released. I mean, they haven't even released video of Paddock walking in or out of the hotel, just walking in or out. No audio, no video. Now, the kid in Parkland, we know that there are cameras there. The sheriff said there was cameras. He held a press conference about a week after the shooting, and he said, we have the video, but we're not going to release it till after the trials, and we may never release it. Now, why would the sheriff say that? Under what circumstances can you think of where the sheriff would say, we will never release that video? Now, remember, the video is public. It's a public space. That would be like showing video of a park. Why not? What could possibly be on that video that would justify not releasing it to the public? I have some ideas. And the last thing, one of the last things we're going to talk about, we're going to circle back to this, to where it might make sense why they would say that. And I'm pretty sure it's the same reason why Vegas is never going to release any of theirs. And I think I can say pretty safely, Vegas is never going to release any of theirs. That's just never going to happen. So we have two public places where two public events happen that are both caught on audio and video. Now, when I say audio, I don't mean just in the school. All of the police were wearing microphones. Okay, that's standard issue these days. Those are all recorded at headquarters. We know that the night in Vegas, for the first day or two, we had a lot of that chatter because people had their police scanners on. We had a lot of those conversations. Within a week, the FBI had confiscated every one of those, and you can't hardly find any of that anywhere. Why? Why would they do that? Again, we'll circle back to that, but I believe there is a reason. So we have public events in a public place on audio and on video, and none of it is ever going to be released. Why? Can you think of any circumstance where that would be justified? We'll circle back. Another interesting thing, if you go back and look at any of the accounts of the Vegas shooting, you will notice something very interesting. The cops do not intervene until he's done shooting. Now, we have the narrative from the cops by the sheriff's department, which in my opinion is false. But nobody breaks into his room. Nobody stops him shooting or stops the shooting. Nobody goes in until he is done shooting. Then the cops intervene. And then, even then, it's a while after he stops before we know for sure that he's down. I believe he was down the whole time. I don't think he did it. I think they have made that whole scenario what they wanted to. The fact of the matter is, whoever did the shooting did it for about 13 minutes, and nobody intervened. And it just so happened, ha ha ha, that Las Vegas police officers were in the lobby before the shooting started. Now, why did it take them more than 13 minutes to get up there and to break the door down? They wanted to tell us that it was protocol, they were getting backup, they were cleaning out the side rooms, and on and on and on with all the excuses. The fact of the matter is, he got all of his shooting done before any door was breached. You go to Parkland. When the information came out, we now know that the 4 Parkland or the Broward County sheriffs that were there were all stationed on the outside of the school while the shooting was going on. They were outside. Coral Gable County or Coral Gable police pulled up and said, "What are you guys doing?" And they rushed into the building. By that time, the shooting was over. Again, is that really protocol? A lot was made out of the first guy. Then people started asking questions about the rest of Broward County. Then when they said, well, we were ordered to stand down, then all of a sudden the sheriff comes out and says that the audio and video may never be released. Again, under what circumstances? So, public event, public taping, audio and video of a public event that will never be released. Under what circumstances is that even a thing? In both instances, I asked myself this same question on both events. If I were Paddock and I really did do the shooting in Vegas and I really had all of those guns and all of that ammunition, why did I stop after 13 minutes? I mean, think about that. There were still thousands of people down there to shoot. There was all of those cops. There was all of the hotels that were within gunshot distance because he had powerful rifles. He could have stood up there and shot for an hour. Why did he stop after 13 minutes? Now, the sheriff's department wants us to believe it was because somebody breached the door and shot him. I don't believe that for a second. I think it was a very well-timed military event. They needed 13 minutes to do what they wanted to do and then time to get out. They shot for 13 minutes. Then the cops, and I use air quoting things, breached the door. That took all of the tension off of the shooting and put it into that hotel room. And while the attention was there, the people that really did the shooting scattered like rats and they were gone. Now, why do I think that? Because if you look at all of the pirate videos that are out there, if you could go back and listen to all of the audio that was on the police scanners, it was very obvious that there was more than one shooter. And after the shooting had stopped, up to an hour and a half later, while the police were still in the hotel, they had gone up and down the strip shooting in these different hotels, creating chaos. So there's no doubt in my mind what happened there. Now let's take a look at Parkland. He went in and shot for, I think they said 3 minutes. I think they said it was over in 3 minutes. So he goes in, he shoots however many he shoots, and then walks out of the class, or walks out of the building, and is found in a different locale when the police finally catch him. Now, why did he stop? If his goal was to shoot as many people as possible, why didn't he just stand in the building and keep shooting? Because the cops weren't coming to get him. And yet he was confident enough that he walked right outside the building with the rest of the kids, and with no fear. He had no fear of getting caught. He just walked right by the cops and into another building. And we also know that as he was walking out, he was talking to some girl that he knew, and while they were talking, the girl said she heard gunshots at the other end of the building. Again, more shooters. So my issue is, why did both of these shooters stop before the cops got in there? In the instance of Paddock, I believe it was he was dead before the thing even started. He was a patsy, and the other people who actually did the shooting had it timed down in order to give them time to get away. I believe in Parkland, he stopped because he was told to stop so that they could catch him. Gave him an opportunity to think he was going to get away. He was told to stop, and I think he left. They went back and picked him up because they needed to get him. They needed somebody to hang this on. The next thing, there has been no physical proof at all in either case released. Now, when I say no physical proof, what does that mean? Well, let's take a look at Vegas. Has there been any ballistics done on any of the rifles? Not that I know of. How many guns have we confirmed were being used? None. We know from pirated video and from the audio on the chatter that the police had confirmed that first night, confirmed 4 different shooters at 3 different hotels. That's confirmed. So if they took those 4 bullets or 4 scenes and found bullet casings, and we know they found them all over, and compared them, we would have knowledge of 4 separate guns being used. However, the sheriff's report said there was 1 shooter, and it was Paddock, and 1 rifle with a bump stock in the hotel. So the ballistics will not match up with the sheriff's story. Therefore, that information will never, ever be released. More physical proof that has never been released. The hotel cameras, we covered this earlier. None of that footage never have and never will be released, because I believe that camera hotel footage will show complicity between the hotel staff, him, and the FBI, because it will show these people coming and going on a semi-regular basis leading up to this. The radio transmissions between the police department and the police in the field, and the scanners and the hotel, and all of that communication will never be released because it is diametrically opposed to the scenario that the FBI and the sheriff department is emitting from there. The supposed witness that was shot supposedly in the leg, which is not true, by padding down the hallway, was being sheltered by the hotel, not by the sheriff's department, not by the FBI, but was being sheltered by the hotel. That is unbelievably, it's just unbelievable. He just kind of disappeared. There's been no DNA evidence at all released. There should have been all types of DNA in that hotel room. However, I believe that the DNA they found in there will point to FBI personnel, hotel personnel, probably CIA personnel in that hotel within a short period of time of the shooting, and that will go diametrically opposed to the scenario they want us to paint. Therefore, no DNA evidence will ever be released. Crime scene pictures. There was a released set of 2 or 3 pictures of the crime scene in the hotel room. If you believe that's the crime scene, I do not. I mean, there was a crime committed there. I'm just not sure what crime it was. I don't believe he was shot. I don't believe there was shooting there. I'm not convinced he was even killed in that room. But I am convinced he was killed, or someone was killed, and the body either placed there or shot there. But as far as shooting all those people at the concert was not done from that hotel room. I don't believe that for a second. But those pictures that were released were, again, pirated pictures. And if you look at those closely and examine the wound and examined, as an example, if he did 13 minutes of shooting, which, and I don't remember the exact numbers, but let's say there was 6 30-second rounds and they shoot 100, and I don't remember, but there should have been a mountain of bullet casings. If you look at the carpeting in those first pictures that got out, there might have been 15 or 20 bullet casings on the floor. There was a pistol above the head of whoever was laying on the ground that had been moved. And you can tell by the way the blood was dripped from, the gun was laid on the floor, then the body and the blood was put on, then the gun was moved to outside the blood, and you can see all of that on the pictures. Those were quickly confiscated, and as far as I know, no other pictures of the crime scene have been released. Also, there is a camera right outside one of those windows that he supposedly busted out and shot out of, right above that window. That camera footage, if the shooting was indeed done out that window, would very easily show muzzle flash and the rifle sticking out the window. It does not. There are helicopter video from all around that should have showed muzzle flash from that window. It did not. None of those pictures, none of those videos, none of those audios, none of those DNA, none of those ballistics are ever going to be released. Now let's talk about Parkland. There should have been, and we know there was, video in the school and around the school. We know that because the Broward County Sheriff's Department told us there was. We know for a fact that there was audio, again, between the deputies and the police headquarters. We know that. That is never going to be released because there's already been a hint. It's only been a couple of weeks, but there's already been a hint that the Deputies that were on site said he heard gunshot outside the building, which is why he was outside. We know that there was a girl that was walking out that said as she was standing next to the shooter, she heard gunfire from the other side of the building. Again, multiple shooters, just like Vegas. Now, that would be the reason why none of that audio and none of that video would ever be released. If somebody had seen another shooter, if someone had heard another shooter, if someone had heard or seen shooting outside the building, if there were shell casings outside, that would certainly justify not releasing that, because that would go against the single shooter story that they're putting out, just like it happened in Vegas. The guy that they are blaming the shooting on at Parkland is an 18-year-old young man who is said to have the mental ability of a 12 or 13-year-old. If the FBI told a 12 or 13-year-old who was mentally challenged to do something, it would be very easy to get them to do it and to take the fall, and you wouldn't have to kill him. Has there been any ballistics reports done on the gun that he used to shoot to release and verify? If he killed those people, the bullets from them should match the gun that he carried. I haven't seen or heard any ballistic report being done. What about the DNA? Was there any DNA done on the bullets, on the gun, on his clothing, the Uber ride that he took to get there? Did they go over that car? We don't know. And we will never know. They're going to sweep this under the rug just like they did Vegas. But when you think about all of the proof that should be there very easily, what about crime scene pictures in the school? If you're not going to release the video, how about showing me pictures of the dead bodies? Let me see the damage let me see the dead bodies. Let me see the blood spatter. Let me see the bullet holes. Let me count the bullet holes. Was it done up close and personal, or was it a spray? Were they really killed? I didn't see any bodies anywhere on any video. I did not see. I saw them hauling bags out, but I didn't see anything inside the bags. I did not see blood spatter on that guy's clothes when they arrested him, and there should have been. If he killed a lot of people in the school building, there should have been blood on his shoes and spray back on his clothes. I didn't see any of that. Did you? Why not? So, no physical proof has been released on either case. The FBI has been in charge of both of these investigations. Remember when the sheriff in Vegas held his 2 or 3 press conferences, and he had that creep hovering over him from the FBI to make sure he didn't say anything wrong? The FBI was definitely in charge of that investigation. The sheriff was just a mouthpiece. The sheriff down in Parkland has been the talking point, but he is by no means in charge of that investigation. The FBI is running that investigation as well. Another thing both of these have, and every one of the things that we have talked about, from JFK to Twin Towers to Sandy Hook to Vegas to Parkland and all points in between is gun control. Now, there have been things that need, like getting terrorism legislation through, getting government control and takeover of airports after the towers, trying to get bump stocks taken care of, wanting to get metal detectors in all public buildings nationwide. These things, the first cry from anyone every time one of these happens is gun control. Now you have to ask yourself why. I did a program not too long ago about it. Has amazed me how we have done nothing to protect our children from all of these shootings. But every time they want to talk about gun control, why? Why aren't we talking about stupid control? Put up metal detectors, put a retired cop in there, and that'll end it. I mean, it's not, and they haven't done it, but they always harp on gun control. If the FBI is in charge of the investigations and they're covering them up and they want gun control, you have to ask yourself, why? Because the federal government cannot control people who are armed. They want unarmed sheeple so they can have the guns. So the next time anybody talks to you about gun control, the first response you should say is, okay, let's start with you and your bodyguards, Mr. Senator. Let's take guns from all of the government, and then we can start taking it from all the people. But you know what? By the time they got all the people's guns, the government and the crooks would be the only ones that have the guns. I believe they are, well, we'll get to the end of that. Gun control is the motivation for doing these in both of these instances and all of the ones that you can think of in between. Gun control is the major push. And now here's something that I found very, very interesting. I want you to pretend that you're the person, either in Vegas or in Parkland or in both. Let's start with Vegas. You are a 60-year-old man who's going to carry 200 rifles up to the 30th floor. I'm just using round numbers. To the 30th floor over a 1-week period on top of all that ammunition. Have you ever carried one of those boxes of ammunition? I did when I was in my 20s, and it is not light. And you never got any resistance or any questions from anyone in that hotel. Think about that for a second. No resistance from anybody in a hotel. Those windows in those hotel rooms, because, well, for many reasons, are many inches thick. Okay, you could almost drive a car through one of those and it wouldn't break. But we are supposed to believe that he shot a couple of bullets into that and busted out 2 of those windows for a long period of time. Oh, by the way, they're all alarmed. So as soon as you even hit one hard, an alarm goes off. Okay. He busted out 2 of them. And we were originally showed a little hammer. Okay. And we were supposed to believe he busted those windows out with that little hammer. We have since seen demonstrations where a big, muscular young man with a sledgehammer, they had like a half a dozen of these men that each took turns beating on one frame of glass and never did bust it. They cracked it and they put little shreds in it, but they never did bust it out. They shot at it. It did not bust out. So somehow those windows got out. And the alarms did not go off in 2 rooms. And still, no resistance from the hotel, no interference from anybody, anywhere. And the camera that we know. You can see it on any footage. You look at the outside of the hotel. There was a camera right outside his window, right above his window. So not only should an alarm gone off, but it should have been on video that a window was being busted out and a rifle sticking out and curtains blowing out the window, and yet there was no resistance, no questions being asked, no cops being called, no alarms going off, no resistance at all, no signals at all. I don't believe that for a second. Let's talk about Parkland. We know that the teachers were all warned about this individual. If you ever see him on campus, let us know, especially if he has a book bag. He's not to be on the grounds. He had been seeing a psychiatrist regularly. He was on psychotic drugs. The sheriff's department had been called out to his house 37 times in the last few years. How many times has the sheriff's been called to your house? Even if you have a troublemaker in your house, a couple of times is probably above average. This was 37 times, and he had no resistance, no record. Now, the press is making a big deal out of this promise program, and that contributed, I'm sure. But still, 37 times by the sheriff's department, and he still had no resistance to getting into the school. He got an Uber rider. So we're supposed to believe that this kid took an AR-15 into a Uber rider with ammo and some type of a bag, walked into the school, and received no resistance. He went into the bathroom to put the gun together and load up. Somebody walked in on him and he told him to get out, so he left. Still, no resistance. He had to walk by the office to get there. So that means he passed people in the hallways and he passed the office. And somebody saw him putting the gun together and still no resistance. After all of that, he walks out into the hall with a loaded rifle and starts shooting, and still no resistance. Nobody tackles him. Now, we had some heroes, supposedly, that jumped in to try to save the kids, but nobody tackles him. That's odd. When the Muslims took over the aircraft from Philadelphia, the people on the plane attacked the Muslims and the plane crashed. But they attacked. They didn't just stand there. This guy got no resistance. Why is that? I believe there was a reason. And I believe the reason is the same for both of these events. And I'm going to close with what I believe the reason was. In Vegas, how did he get through hotel security? Vegas not only is known for all of the cameras they have, but their security is impeccable. Most of those hotels have a whole floor dedicated to security, where they watch the cameras, they check alarms, they patrol. You cannot move 200 guns into that hotel, into a room by one individual or a group of individuals without security noticing it. There is no possible way that happened. So how did he get by all of that security? I don't believe he did. How did that 18-year-old kid get through all of the security? There was guards there. There was a security guard at the school who was armed. How did he get by him? There were several security people that were unarmed. How did he get by them? How did he get by all the teachers in the office? How did he get through all that security easily without being stopped at all? Ask yourself this question. How did the sheriff in Vegas manage to stop all info to the public? He absolutely refused to give anything. Every time somebody would go investigate, they'd get booted out, stonewalled. Mainline media was not asking any questions. Same in Parkland. Mainstream media is not asking any questions, and the sheriff is giving no information to the public at all. None. We know for a fact in Vegas that all of the cell phones from everybody anywhere around any shooting had been confiscated. Videos and pictures had been wiped clean, and then the phones handed back. You mean to tell me that in a high school filled with girls that there is no cell phone video being released? I don't believe that for a second. I believe time will come and time will show that either the sheriff's department and or the FBI has confiscated all those kids' telephones, and any video or pictures that were taken was cleaned off and the phones handed back. I don't think that's an accident. You can't tell me that on a campus full of kids with phones that nobody got video of that guy. Nobody got video. They had 3 to 4 minutes. Kids today on a cell phone can activate a camera in 10 seconds. And nobody got any video of this guy. Nobody got any recording of him, either pictures or video or audio. I don't believe that for a second. I believe that any of that was confiscated by the sheriff's department and or the FBI. I talked earlier about, I believe that there is proof on both instances where there were multiple shooters. I believe there was at least 4 shooters in Vegas, and my theory had actually a half a dozen. I believe there was a half a dozen shooters in Vegas. I believe it was coordinated. I believe it was done with military accuracy, honestly. And an escape route was planned and executed. I believe there were at least 2 shooters in Parkland with an escape route, and the guy that they pinned it on actually got out. He got out of the school. It was in another location when they finally arrested him, a la the JFK shooting. You know, Lee Harvey Oswald was not caught in the library. He was found in a movie theater, and the police painted the scenario where he was supposed to be in the library, when in fact, you go back and look at it, he was probably in the theater the whole time. He was a patsy. Now, for all of the questions that I have asked on both of these shootings, here's the big one. How come in both cases they met no resistance? In both cases, they got by all of the security. In both instances, the FBI was involved. In both instances, no intervention was done until the shootings were done. How is that possible? And here is how it's possible. Again, in Parkland, this was not made public, but in one place, and I just happened to catch it. Okay. In both instances, there was a drill that was done that day. So, in Vegas, the FBI had set up a drill where they were going to pretend like there was a mass shooting, and the hospital was told, the hotel was told, some of the other police were told, the ambulances were told, so that when the alarm went off, nobody was upset. And so when Guns were being hauled up to the room. It was all part of a staged event. All right. That's why the video had to be confiscated, because they had video of all of this stuff being hauled up there. They were told at the time that it was to be a staged event and they wanted to make it as real as possible. Then when it actually happened, that's when everything had to crack down. There was a legitimate drill done earlier, and then the real event was done later. I believe the same thing happened in Parkland. We know that there was a drill as a shooter on the ground earlier that day. We know that to be true. That's why when he walked onto the campus with his gun hidden and somebody saw him in the bathroom. I mean, think about that. If you walked into the bathroom, saw some guy putting a gun together and said, "You better run," wouldn't you go banging on doors and yelling and screaming, "He's got a gun, he's got a gun"? Wouldn't you do that? No. This guy just walks out. Why? The only thing that answers that is because they had done a drill earlier in the day and they thought they were going to do the drill again. So that when they heard the gun, they thought it was fake bullets. When they saw bodies drop, they thought they were actors. They may have been. I don't know. And when he was all done shooting, just like the scenario said, he puts the gun down and he walks away. The other shooter is the one that actually killed the people, I believe. This guy was made a patsy, just like Lee Harvey Oswald was, and just like Paddock was. This guy gets to live because he's going to claim diminished actions, and Paddock was killed. JFK's supposed shooter was killed the next day by I can't think of the guy, Jack Ruby killed him. So the mafia stepped in and killed that patsy, so there was no proof. You see, so I think there was a drill. We know there was a drill in Vegas. We know there was a drill in Parkland. We know that in both cases there was no resistance, there was no interference, there was no intervention, there was no alarms, there was no anything. It was just allowed to happen under the guise of a drill. Once it happens, the FBI closes in, shuts everything down, and the Democrats start yelling and screaming about gun control, and that's what this is all about. All of these shootings, all of these bombings, and God help the Democrats if this ever is proven. They are killing our people. They are plotting our death, all for the sake of taking over this country. If it is ever proven, without a shadow of a doubt, there will be revolution in this country, and there should be. When the government gets that much control and that much power, and they can wave it in front of our face. And as I record this, today is the 4th, okay? I just saw 2 days ago in Houston, Texas, that they were looking for crisis actors, that the event was going to happen March 4th, today, in Houston, or somewhere. The call was in Houston. And I haven't done the research, but I do know for a fact that the shooting in Vegas, there was a cattle call put out in Hollywood for crisis actors for Vegas. So here we have, again, a cattle call in Houston for today. If an event happens today, there will be no question in my mind that that will have been staged by the FBI and our government. This whole thing is about taking over our country, inch by inch, second by second, event by event. Did you know that under Obama there was 168 mass shootings? Go back and do the research. 168. Now, they haven't gotten any legislation passed, but I want you to think about this. It's kind of like in boxing. It takes 15 rounds for a good heavyweight. And you go 14 and a half rounds and all you're doing is landing blows to the stomach and to the chest and to the arms. And what's the goal? To wear them down. So that when you finally take that left gut shot and then the right hook to knock them out, they go down because of the last 14 and a half rounds. I think that's what's happening here. The more these events happen, the more serious the conservatives are listening to gun control. I think we should be just the opposite. We should bristle more. We should ask more questions. We should demand that the proof, the ballistics, the DNA, the crime scene pictures, the hotel videos should all be released from Vegas before we do anything. We don't sign one piece of legislation until every one of these questions are proven and made public so we, the people, can see what our government is doing to us. That's just my opinion. I said we would go back and tie this together. Because of the drills, because of the planning, because of everything that is there, all of this can be proven. What I just explained can all be proven when this proof is released. It's very, very simple. The only way to keep this from the American public, and that's why I know it's never going to be released, because I know that I'm right about this. They will never release the hotel video. Mark this down. They will never unedited. Let me rephrase that. They will never release unedited video. They will never release unedited audio. They will never release unedited photographs. They will never release unedited ballistics. They will never release unedited pictures. None of that will ever be released unedited, because as soon as it is, the whole thing is exposed. Same in Parkland. So you watch as time goes forward, and you connect. I have connected in these programs, I've connected 3 dots: JFK, Vegas, Parkland. And I'm going to continue, because there will be more. If I'm right, there will be more. And as this happens, I'm going to continue to draw the dots. The next program I do on this, and I pray to God I don't have to do one, but I just know that there's another one coming. Not because Americans are slipping down a slippery slope, not because Americans are more violent than anybody else, not because we have a larger amount of wackadoodles than anybody else on the planet, but because our federal government, certain establishment, bureaucracies, and people in our government want to take over our government. They want to take over so that we, the people, don't have guns and can't fight them. So that we, the people, are no longer in charge, but they are. So they have the guns, they have the power, they have the money. That's what they want. That's what they're after, and that's what all of this is about. I believe this started back in 1963. I believe it has picked up speed and is going warp speed under Obama. And I think it's going to slow down under Trump, but I don't think it's going to stop. Well, obviously it's not. We've had 2 events under Trump. I believe another one's coming. I hope I'm wrong. Let's continue to pray that I'm wrong, and pray that whatever is going on, that is not successful. Well, that's about all I wanted to talk about this week in politics. I do not have any current events because the entire week has been pretty much taken up by talk of gun control and bump stock control and the machinations going on back and forth. It just disgusts me when I pretty sure I know what's going on. For Trump to even be listening to any of this without insisting on proof from the Vegas thing being released publicly is just asinine opinion. But anyway, that's all I wanted to talk about for this week in politics. I look forward to next week when we can sit down and talk about this week in politics.